Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. A woman is alleging that Academy Award-winning actor Cuba Gooding Jr. raped her back in 2013. And this woman, who is now filing a civil lawsuit looking for financial damages, is alleging that your Cuba Gooding Jr. lured her into a Soho hotel in August of 2013 and raped her. And when I take a critical examination of this lawsuit and these allegations, they don't seem like they have that ring of truth. And the reason why I believe they don't have that ring of truth is because this woman is out here filing a civil lawsuit as related to this sex crime and not going out here to file criminal charges. You would think that a woman who has been sexually violated, like Cuba Gooding has been alleged to have participated in, this woman would want to ensure that this man was taken off the streets and would not be able to harm another human being. That would be the priority of any woman who has suffered sexual violence at the hands of a perpetrator. Usually, most women want to ensure that no other woman suffers that type of sexual violence at the hands of a sexual predator. That would be the priority you would think most women would have regarding dealing with a sexual predator. But this woman, she wants to take this case to civil court and not criminal court, where she could possibly get justice as related to criminal charges. And that's where I find her story to be quite suspect, because if you were a victim, again, of a rapist, you would want to see that rapist put in jail. That would be your first priority, and your second priority would be to go out here and get some sort of civil damages to recompense you for your mental and emotional distress. But this woman is going straight for the bag of Cuba Gooding Jr., not looking to get criminal charges filed against him. And that's where I have a red flag as related to her case. The other reason why I have a red flag as related to her case is the fact that she's filing this lawsuit in 2020 and not filing it in 2013. Now, if this woman had suffered as related to your Cuba Gooding Jr., again, you would think she would have filed this lawsuit in 2013 and tried to get justice back then. And you think that this woman would have also filed this lawsuit a couple of years ago when Cuba Gooding Jr. was dealing with these allegations as related to forcible touching and the Me Too movement coming after him, after all of these other women came out and made allegations against your Cuba Gooding Jr. You would think that this woman would have come out at the same time and presented her allegations when all of these other women made their allegations. And that's where I start to see red flags as related to this lawsuit, because when I look at all of the details from a critical perspective and look at the evidence objectively, this whole case and this allegations related to it do not have that ring of truth as related to the evidence. And the fact that she's going into a civil court and not a criminal court where these charges can be dealt with and adjudicated by a prosecutor in a criminal court case shows me that this woman's allegations don't have any sort of validity, because if they had some sort of validity, she would have pursued this case in criminal court. But she probably didn't want to pursue this case in criminal court, because if she pursued this case in criminal court, chances are she would have been caught in a lie, and she would have practically perjured herself on the stand under oath. Moreover, if the police had done a DNA test kit on this woman, they probably would have found nothing to corroborate her allegations. That's probably why she didn't file any charges in 2013, and that's probably why she didn't say anything a couple of years ago when these allegations were being levied against Cuba Gooding Jr., because she knew that her story was weak, and she decided to come after Cuba Gooding Jr. with this weak story in a civil court in the hopes of getting a payday at the expense of Cuba Gooding Jr. And this is one of the more troubling things about the era of the Me Too movement. There is no real due process as related to these kinds of cases. A lot of times, these women can come out here, make these allegations against a man without any sort of evidence to back it up, and then they can go out here and either get a criminal conviction, like in the case of Bill Cosby, or they can try to get a large civil judgment, like what this woman is trying to do to Cuba Gooding Jr., all based on an allegation without having to bring in any sort of evidence to corroborate their story or substantiate their claims. And these women can do this without any sort of reasonable time. I mean, when I look at this case, this woman coming from 2013 all the way to 2020, making these allegations of alleged sex crimes, and then having no police report, no sort of DNA evidence to substantiate this, and she's going to go into a civil court where she knows that the standard is based on on preponderance of the evidence and not based on reasonable doubt. This just shows me, again, the disingenuousness of some of these women of this Me Too movement, and how they are just looking for paydays at the expense of men like Cuba Gooding Jr. and looking to take advantage of our weakened criminal justice system, which was weakened, as I see it, by the false conviction of Bill Cosby, which took us off the platform of due process under the law and the standard of innocent until proven guilty into this new standard of trust and believe. And the standard of trust and believe is one that women out here who are predatory are trying to exploit. And this looks like a case of a predatory woman allegedly looking to exploit your Cuba Gooding Jr. based on past alleged information and looking to do things through, again, the civil courts in what I consider a very disingenuous fashion, because if there was a sex crime to take place, you would think a woman's first course of action would be to ensure that another woman would not suffer the same sexual violence that was perpetrated against her, and that she would make efforts to ensure that the criminal justice system punished this individual for participating in sexual violence and doing harm in one of the most egregious ways a person could harm another human being. You would think that that woman would want to try to protect society, but this woman is out to get economic resources first, and that's where I see where her story just doesn't have that ring of truth, because a woman who has actually been sexually violated like this, again, her first priority is going to be heading towards that police department and filing that police report. But when you see women who don't want to file police reports, it's a red flag. And the reason why they don't want to file police reports is because they know filing a false police report is a crime, and they know perjuring themselves in court is a crime. So these women, they want to use the standard of trust and believe to get a payday at a man like Cuba Gooding's expense, get a settlement out of court, and then be able to live off of those resources for as long as they possibly can before they go out here and make another allegation against another individual. And this is why men out here can't be like Cuba Gooding Jr., going out here to invite women up to their hotel rooms. This is why any smart man out here minimizes his contact with women that aren't his wife. This is why men keep their distance from women, and this is why men have to go out here and have a protocol for engaging with women in the public. Because if you don't have a protocol for dealing with women where you find ways to minimize your contact with that woman as related to being alone with her, you always make sure you have some sort of device to record any interaction you have with that woman, and you always make sure to be in places where you are in public so that there are witnesses to be able to corroborate your behaviors and your actions, so that this woman cannot create situations where she can create he said, she said situations, the kind of situations in our gynocentric society where a woman's word will be taken over a man's, and that man can possibly wind up either losing much of his economic resources in a civil court or possibly losing his freedom in a criminal court. So a man today has to watch himself in this Me Too era, because in this Me Too era, a man can lose everything from his professional reputation, his job, and his career, and possibly lose his freedom. And a man has to go out here and make efforts to protect himself, because these women out here, a lot of them are very predatory, and they're looking for a payday, and they're looking to revise history so that they can change the narrative of a story so that they can get paid for something that happened years ago, and change the story so they can make themselves out to be a victim so that they can make themselves out to get paid. And in a lot of these cases, a guy, again, has to watch himself these days, because there are women who are part of this Me Too movement who are looking to get, again, fast access to a man's resources, and they know they can do this through making allegations and then using those allegations to foster a lawsuit where they're looking for a judgment or an out-of-court settlement. And the only person who can protect you from this kind of danger is you. And as a man, you have to make sure you're not in places where these women are, because they can't make an allegation if you're not there. And if you're not there, they can't make statements about you doing something to them if you were never there, and it can't be substantiated or corroborated. So one of the best ways to avoid situations like Cuba Gooding Jr. got in is to cut off all contact from these kinds of females, and make it where you're only going to deal with them through a text message, or you give them a business card and you deal with them in a business type situation, and they have to show you what they really are about when they have to deal with you like that. Usually when you give female predators a business card or you take their phone number, usually that's when they want to cut off all contact, because they know they can't run any games on you. So when you take their number, again, they know they have no way of getting back in. And when you give them a business card, it gives them no way to get access to you. So you have to find ways to cut off their access. And when you cut off their access, you prevent them from creating situations where they can say, "Me too," because you're looking out for you. If you want to see me make more videos like this discussing men's issues, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my men's issues books and avoid female predators, you can pick up my books, Stop Simping in the Workplace, Stop Simping, and The Man Crisis on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.